Welcome to Seasonal Pathways Vodcast. This is our first panel vodcast, and we're really excited to do this because Happy New Year's. Well, Happy New School Year anyway. And today we're going to talk about the challenges that brings to ECE leadership when it comes to a new school year. So our panel today is Lindsay Walker, who's here with the point of view from the emerging leader. We have Babette Thompson, who's going to bring the executive's point of view. We're going to bring Deborah Rodriguez in to talk about the owners, the partners, the franchises point of view. So as a director in an ECE program, what do you believe leaders should be focusing on when it comes to the point of starting a new school year? So Lindsay, talk to us about that emerging leader. What's going through their mind and what do they need to be thinking about?
Yes. So as an emerging leader, I think we need to be focusing on making sure that our teachers are well prepared. I think that this new school year tends to be a time of transition as well. For a lot of children coming in and out of the center. And so enrollment, of course, is a really big part of that as well. Coming into the new school year, just making sure that your teachers are well supported. They know that they can come to you if they need anything, and making sure that they have, but just basically whatever it is that they need, and know that they can come to you if they need something.
Very much agree with you. I think especially as emerging leaders, you're building that relationship and you need to have that that trust back and forth that they can come to you if needed. Babette, as an executive leader, that could be a variety of things. I mean, you could still be in the center, you could be out of the center, you could be, multiple centers or whatever. But as the executive leader, what are some of the things that you think about when it comes to beginning a new school year?
I think about how stressful it is for everybody, the children, the teachers, the directors, everyone. My opinion, executive leader is there to support everyone and to help keep it as calm as possible, as smooth as possible. Be there to pick them up when they have one of those days that everything seems to be going to shambles around them, and pointing out the things that are going right and how we're going to fix the things that went wrong. And there's, as long as nobody's bleeding, we're doing pretty well. So it's just a support, my opinion, it's a real support position. And each director is going to have different needs. That's why you really need to know those directors or leaders, however you've got your system set up, and help them try to plan ahead. Sometimes we get caught up in the last minute of things. And the more they can plan ahead and be prepared for the usual, the unusual, then is not quite as hard to take sometimes.
Good points. Good point. Deborah, when it comes to, you've got a partner in the business, or you are a part of a franchise, or some of these other little bit different kinds of roles that we might play. What are some of the things that come into play when it's a new school year?
That's a good question. Partnerships in business can include a unique set of challenges. Each party involved has his or her own ideas, and sometimes the goals and the outcomes can be different. Most of the time they are. In my experience, communication is essential and very similar to that of a marriage relationship, in that you need to keep an open mind and acknowledge and be respectful of the other person's perspective, and that will help ensure success. Additionally, realizing your own strengths and weaknesses, as well as those of your partner, can lead to the outcomes that we long for or wish for. Great leaders know the value of fostering the strengths of others. This is true in both partnerships and in supervisory staff positions as well. Although sometimes challenging, a healthy business partnership can bring about the desired outcomes for fabulous program for children, parents, and for staff. So I have experience in that, 20 some years of experience, and it's important to acknowledge that you don't have the same, sometimes the same goals, sometimes the same perspectives, or so communication is probably the most important part of it. So.
I agree. And I think one of the things we all have in common is we believe communication is one of the most important aspects of any role we have. And I think that's one of the highlights that comes out with this whole idea of each one of us representing a different point of view. My point of view is kind of from the transitional leader. So we do have some of you out there who are looking at transitioning. Now, it could be from position to position. So it could be a director to an executive director, or an executive director to an owner, or some of that sort. But a lot of people that I'm working with right now are actually transitioning out of the business of early care and education. So that means they are no longer necessarily totally involved in the day-to-day, but still transitioning out. They have to make sure that some of the things that need to happen in order for a good school year to actually come to fruition are in place. And a lot of that is not doing the same old things you've always done. And like you said, Deb, keeping an open mind that maybe they're going to do something different than what you did. Or, like you said, Bobette, as far as that support, how do you be a support without micromanaging what they did? And, Lindsay, like keeping those relationships so important, and keeping them face to face and keeping the connection going. As a transitional leader, you're modeling all that, and then you're stepping back and letting, the rest of it go. So one of the things that I'd like to ask now is, what do you believe is the biggest challenge that the leader of the Early Care and Education Center has when the new year happens or the new year comes around? What is the biggest challenge? And this might be just from your point of view, or it might be also maybe from experience that you had when you were a director. So I'm going to start with Deborah first on this one.
I believe definitely one of the biggest challenges, and I believe that Lindsay touched on this when she spoke earlier, is just being as prepared as possible for an influx of new children, maybe an influx of new staff, a change in schedule. You've got bus runs now, and you've got school age kids there in the afternoon that maybe weren't there throughout the summer. And it's just the ongoing, staying organized and being able to navigate it without, too many issues occurring. I have an experience from years ago when my business partner and I were opening our second childcare facility. It was the largest facility that it is still in existence actually here in Anchorage. And because of the construction, it took us months before we were able to actually open it. We even had one parent that we called that said, "My son is shaving now. It's been taking that long for the center to open up," which was kind of funny. But at the end of the day, we opened a brand new facility, and this is not, as complicated as a new school year would be. But as an example of how organization is so important, all brand new children, all brand new staff. We started with a completely full center of 100 plus kids with new staff and children and everything. So being extremely organized and having your plan in place is essential. We had name tags for each of the kids so that the teachers could identify them. We had to look at IDs of every single parent coming and going because it was their first time. And so it can be quite challenging on a large scale like that. And then, of course, the small scale of getting a new school year launched and all of that too. So yeah, that is my perspective on it.
And very nerve-wracking, for sure. Very good. Bobette, what is the main challenge that you think these leaders are facing at this time of year?
We don't like change, so we want to do the same thing the same way and hope for different results, but it doesn't happen that way. And depending on how long that director's been in place, and depending on how long some of her staff has been in place, it can get really rigid as far as, well, we've always done it this way. I think flexibility, they need to learn to be flexible for themselves, for the children, for the staff, for the parents, everyone, because things are going to come up that are not expected. From a child getting hurt to, a child walking in and saying they're enrolled and you don't even know they're coming, but that falls on the director. But at the end of the day, she's got to be enjoying this. She or he has got to be enjoying this in some way. So what can they do, or what can we do to help them be in a position to enjoy this transition period? Because we don't like change.
Right.
And as an industry, most of us don't care for change. So it's a real challenging time of year for everybody. And unfortunately, those directors take the brunt of it because they feel responsible for everything. So whether it's the director or the next level, whatever level tiers you have, as the executive director, you're supporting each one of those down the director line, and making sure that they have all the resources that they needed. Don't at the last minute find out that whatever we ordered didn't come, that kind of thing. Not that I'm ordering it, but that I'm ensuring that the orders go through, the payments get made, whatever is my responsibility to help them.
Totally agree. Thank you. Lindsay, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to get real recent actually on this as well. So I'll preface this by saying that my center opened in 2017. So whenever COVID happened, we were just starting to get a normal. I think that this has probably been the first normal year we've had yet. Normal, whatever you want to call that. And so what we experienced in particular, especially last year, and I think a lot of centers were going through this, and I think a lot of centers actually, especially newer centers, go through this, is that there's a lot of wonderful pre-K, free pre-K programs opening. I know that this happened especially last year in the Nashville area. And I know last year, a lot of subsidies ended at that time. The majority of our kids were on subsidies. And so whenever this happened, we suddenly lost our pre-K. Just about all of them went to free or Head Start programs. And I mean, that was great for them. We didn't expect it at all last year. And so I would say that was part of what I was touching on with the transition, is that there's an influx of children, and there's also a bunch of children that tend to leave during this year. And so since we didn't expect to lose our pre-K, we had a wonderful pre-K program at the time. And so we didn't expect any of our children to leave, or very few of them we expected to leave. We knew that there would be some transition. But within about 2 weeks, we lost about 10 children to these free pre-K programs, out of about 12 children. So that was pretty devastating. It was devastating to our teacher at the time too. And so I wanted to speak to that a little bit if other people are going through that. Something that we've done to combat that this year has been our social media push. And I think that has helped combat that, because we post so much stuff that the children are doing now. So our parents are very aware that our pre-K children, all of our children in our center are very, very active, doing a lot of things. So I think that has helped buffer that this year. But last year we were completely unprepared for that, and we didn't, by the time we were calling people on our wait list, they'd already found other centers.
Of course.
So I wanted to touch on that as being a challenge of the beginning of the year, if other centers are going through that.
I think that is a really valuable lesson, to share. And I think it kind of highlights when you are an emerging leader or a new in the field leader, especially, you don't know what you don't know, mm-hmm. And so many times now you know that, and now you know the warning signs to look for, or you might be more receptive to some, gossip that's out there about what might be coming down the pike, or you might be on a new list that gives you more information. And I think that's one of the values, one, that Lindsay is taking on our Facebook page for the emerging leaders. And I think these are the kinds of topics that you guys can talk about. I think also it gives us, as different levels of leaders represented here, that we can have reminders to share with our colleagues who are emerging about the some of the things we might need to think about. So what I'm saying is that as a panel, and you listen to these kinds of things, I don't know when I started out, if I would have even been on that radar either. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
now that you hear that, and maybe some of our listeners that are out there who are new and emerging, you just gave them a great big warning bell that they may have never thought about. And the same thing can be, you can utilize that same kind of scenario in many different ways. So yeah, that's really, really great. So in listening to the different kinds of challenges that our leaders are facing this time of year, what other kinds of recommendations or ideas or thoughts do you have that you could share with all the different levels? Babette, do you want to go first this time?
I thought it's always back to be prepared. I think Deb said that, and I know that Lindsay believes the same thing. If you're seeing things that are not working, then prepare next year to do it differently. But don't wait till July when school starts next week. Start it maybe at the beginning of the year. Get all the directors, all the executive people on leadership team on board with that. Roll it out, and then get the teachers on board with it so that it's a gradual change, however you decide to do it. One of the things that our schools do that I'm not sure why we still do this, is that we let the children visit up rather than, okay, most of them know the teachers. They've been there a while. They know the teachers in the next room anyway. They know what they're going to. I understand letting them see the classroom, but they send one or two at a time, and they get over there. They don't necessarily know the other children very well, and they don't know the routine, so they're not always comfortable. Some of them will cry, and so it gets to be a jumble for everybody. And if their best buddy didn't go, they're not sure their best buddy's coming with them. So why do we do it that way? Same thing with the school systems. They do the kindergartners that way. They come for 2 or 3 days a week for 2 weeks, and it's a mess. I don't understand that. So, if there's a way to start transitioning some of those children a little bit earlier, but leave them there. Once they go over, they don't want to come back. That's the big room. This is the baby room. So start letting those children, and don't make them go back and forth. Let them get acclimated. That way the teachers are also getting acclimated to 2 or 3 at a time. What we do is, as the children, the older children go out in the summer on vacations and then don't come back, they kind of fizzle out rather than one big group. So then we'll start moving some children up and a gradual move up rather than a big one day, blow it out, and everybody's in a new class the next day. And the other thing that I hear every year is the teachers just grumble about, we got these babies and they can't do anything. You do that every year. I don't understand. So how can we help them remember that and make it more joyful for them that they're getting this opportunity again? And all these children are going to look up to and going to learn so much from them.
So my question to you is, what are some tips that you would have for leaders who might in, September, October, November, they have these ideas, we should do this next year. What are the ticklers? How do you remember to do that, or when you should start planning those kinds of things? Do you have a tip for that?
Well, my tip is that you do a quarterly planning meeting, and with whoever your leadership team is, and you may start with the executive director, or however you got it set up, and then gradually pull in more. But as things come up, obviously make anecdotal notes of it as it's happening, or you sometimes do forget. And then you have a meeting right after school starts, that quarter, October, before you get into the holidays. And sit down and kind of say, okay, these are the things we need to look at. Don't have to get in the weeds right now, but these are things we need to look at. And then in January, the next step, and you bring in, and so you're building it rather than trying to do it all at one time, either at the beginning or at the end. The more you can do as you go along, the more time you have to flex it, to tweak it, getting closer. And the more people you get in, and the point where you get the teachers in and start introducing it to them, then everybody at the upper levels on board and so enthusiastic about it that they'll catch it rather than we don't want to change anything, So I think it's a building process. It really in my opinion, needs to be built out by April, because then you get into school and it needs to be to the point that all we're doing over the summer is filling in the details. If we have to change curriculum or we have to change that kind of thing,
that's a great strategy. Awesome. Thank you so much. Lindsay, any special thoughts, ideas that you could, give out there to strengthen a new year?
I think I'm going to touch on a little bit of what Babette said. I think it is really wise advice that she gave about gradual change. And I'm not even just talking about with the children. I think that one of the mistakes that I made initially with my staff, and this is, like she said, this is a time of transition. This is a time of change, and not everybody adapts well to change. Mm-hmm. And I did not understand that at first, because I love change. I thrive on it. I can't wait to experience something new and be a little uncomfortable. Most people are not like that, and I did not appreciate that at first. And so I think that is very, very sage advice to be gradual with your teachers as you're implementing any new ideas. Make sure that they're coming on board with it. Make sure your leadership team, of course, first before your teachers, are coming on board with it as well. Any new ideas or any new things that you're doing, don't make too many changes all at once. I have done that. It's not a good idea. And try to implement change that's happening and transition as gradually as you can. There is going to inevitably be change that happens maybe a little bit more quickly than what most people are comfortable with this time of year. But to the ability that you have, try to make it a little more gradual for them and a little more comfortable.
One of the things that we have found and that we use, I have a partner in the business and all that we find very effective, is when you want someone to do something, throw the idea out and then let them ruminate on it a bit, and then let them bring it back to you as their idea. And they are much more behind it, rather than just trying to cram something down their throat. Especially with teachers, let them have some ownership in that classroom, and so that they see that they're bringing their dreams, not just your dreams, to fruition. Because I've more than once taken something that I was so excited about, and then I find it over in a director's corner somewhere that they never even touched it. Mm-hmm. And it's not a happy feeling.
I'm very much like Lindsay. I love change, as long as I'm the one instigating the change. I'm not necessarily always on board when somebody else has the change. And so I think that's very, very wise. Deb, what's your perspective?
Well, I've been in every part of it, from being in the classroom to being in a leadership at a specific center to being on an executive level, and I just agree with everything that's been said so far, as just being open to making it be a gradual transition, being open to resistance, because it will come from your staff and even from your leaders. Sometimes it's worse from your leaders than it is from the staff in the classroom, because they need to represent what's coming from the executive level. And I know that we've all had experience with that not being the case sometimes. So if you don't have your leaders at the centers having buy-in with what you're presenting, then it's really difficult to get it implemented into the classroom. So I guess my perspective from the top looking down, as far as like the structure of a center, and I know that everybody's programs are different, but in my experience, we had a corporate staff, and then we had kind of a regional staff person that oversaw all of the individual centers and the leaders at those centers. And so just being making sure that it trickles down in the right flow, so that the people directly below you have buy-in and understand what your vision is, and then have buy-in with it, and then want to bring it into the centers and the teachers in the classroom, and then just making sure that the parents all know and understand what's happening as well, because sometimes we tend to focus on our day-to-day, and then parents are taken off guard by, I didn't know this was going to happen. So that's a really key part of it too. But I mean, both of the gals, I think, touched on just allowing the staff to mull it over and maybe, make it their own in ways, that are still within the bounds of what your goals are for it. But just being able to let them feel like they have control, because they're the ones that's going to be implementing it for you. So give them that control within their wheelhouse with their children in the classroom and whatnot. And I think that's going to be most successful. And also, like Bobette was saying, just have the meetings where you like you said, Robin, you asked if, what if something comes to you like, maybe we should do this next year, or try this next year? How do you make sure that that's going to happen? That made me think of like when we go to conference, and all of us have been to conference, and there's so many wonderful things that we learn, and you've got all these notes and all these great ideas, and then you go back and your day-to-day is right there waiting for you. Oftentimes things have been waiting for you, so it's more than just a regular. So sometimes it's difficult to like implement new things, even if you feel really excited about it at the time, just because things happen. So being really organized, having regular meetings with your leaders and them with their staff, and just put everything in writing and put it on a calendar, and all those organizational tips, I think, is what will help us get the outcomes that we really are hoping for in that moment. We're hoping for it, instead of thinking, well, we should have done it this way, and we thought about this last year and we still didn't do it this year. So just being organized like that and involving everybody that's going to take part in it. And I think that would be, that's going to be the way to be successful with it.
Man, you guys are good. I think all of these suggestions have been, really valid and things that are doable. Some of the notes that I kind of wrote down here is, we need to be listeners. It doesn't matter what level of leader you are. You're strongest when you listen. And I don't mean just hearing people. I mean really listening and internalizing, what they're saying and the why they're saying it. And I think part of that goes back to the whole idea of really knowing how to communicate with people, how to read people. We're at Seasonal Pathways, we're really into the whole personality studies so that we can communicate appropriately. And we're going to be coming up with Disc with a Twist here pretty soon as an opportunity for people to kind of learn more about the different personality styles. And one of the things that Lindsay brought up too is you have to listen to them so that you can kind of figure out how you communicate with them. Because if you are excited about change and that's what you like, and you come out so excited about it and they don't like it, how do you change your interactions with them? So I think all of those things are really, really valid. And I also believe that depending on your leadership responsibilities, you give the bigger picture, and as it narrows down into that funnel, if you will, then you allow them to you're just given the parameters. And as they narrow it down, they get to do more and more of the details. As long as they stay within the parameters, they get to do it their way. I totally believe it. Buy-in is critical, but it goes back to, if you don't know how to communicate with people, if you don't know how to strategize, right, to make a plan happen, if you don't know how to listen and learn, you don't know what you don't know. So it's timing, it's planning, it's strategizing, it's learning from what we do. None of us are perfect, but I think we've really given our listeners some really good ideas and strategies. Thank you for sharing your hard-earned work.
Don't forget to celebrate the successes too. Because, we always dwell on what went wrong and what didn't. So whether it's an individual that did something great or the whole group, find a way to celebrate after the transition's over. We did it, and lift everybody up, because otherwise they're going to dread everything.
That is perfect. And I'm going to put a little plug in here, because Lindsay and I just did a podcast for an upcoming podcast on the Gen Zs and connections and things like that. And I think that was one of the things that I realized is probably even more important today than it was when I was a director. And that is making sure that those connections and those relationships are there, not just about school, that you do need to open up and build those relationships and have more of a connection in different ways. So this has been incredibly valuable. I hope that you all as listeners learned something today, and you can come back anytime you want, listen to this again. And please do share it with your friends and your ECE circle so that we can bring more of these to you. And we'll be bringing more of these to you once a month on the third Thursday of the month. So thank you, ladies. It was a pleasure having you today.